Okay, so I'm making meatballs. I'm following a Crockpot Swedish meatball recipe. I will link it below. But my goal is to split these in half and then prep the sauce 2 times, one for the freezer, one for today. And the next time I make these, I can dump everything right into the Crockpot. So the ingredients are beef broth, half and half, cornstarch, Worcestershire sauce. I'm a little worried I'm gonna run out of garlic, but I should have enough. Parsley, ground thyme, nutmeg, salt, and pepper. Split my meatballs, half in the crock pot, half in this bag. Then I'm gonna mix the sauce 1 time, pour it over the crock pot, mix the sauce again, and pour it into the bag. And at the end of the video, you guys can see how the freezer meatballs turn out because I will film it being cooked before I share this. So you'll get to see not only the fresh crock pot version, but the freezer version as well. So stay tuned for that. And we are going to get assembling. And yes, I'm literally going to count these. 1, 2, 3. Bonus meatball goes to the freezer. I'll thank myself later. So I ended up getting 33 meatballs in here and 32 in here. That's 65 all together. And now we'll build the sauce. 1.5 cups of beef broth. A 1/2 cup of half and half. One of the reasons I decided to do this twice was if I was going to buy a carton of beef broth, I could use the entire thing for 2 recipes rather than just use some of it and finding a different recipe. I figure that way most of an entire carton is used. So there's a 1/2 cup of half and half for each of those. Or a tablespoon of cornstarch in each. A tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. A teaspoon of dried parsley, a teaspoon of minced garlic, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, quarter teaspoon of thyme, quarter teaspoon of pepper, just the smallest little smidge, about an eighth of a teaspoon of nutmeg. Okay, this is a job for pig whisk. So within here I have beef broth, half and half, cornstarch, Worcestershire sauce, dried parsley, ground thyme, black pepper, nutmeg, salt, and minced garlic. So the cornstarch kind of settled at the bottom. That's what I'm working up here. And once it's nice and mixed, I'm going to pour one of these, they're exactly the same, over my crock pot of meatballs. And the other one's going to go in my freezer bag, which I will thank myself for in a future meal. My husband does not like meatballs, but I have 2 kids that will devour them with me. Obviously my vegetarian does not eat meatballs, but I always try to make meatballs when we have some leftover that my husband would like that also goes well with mashed potatoes. So since I have 2 kids that will eat them with me, I don't feel bad making them. Or I wait and make meatballs for parties because most people like meatballs. Most people that I like, at least. Can't believe I didn't marry a meatball eater. First things first, we're gonna get the crock pot started, right? Yay! Wow, so saucy. I probably could have had a bigger pot of meatballs, but there's only 3 of us. So I just split the bag. Again, that's like 32 frozen meatballs. 10 should be plenty, especially in that decadent sauce. And this is gonna go on low for 4 hours. If you don't have a bag clip like this, get yourself a best friend like mine who gives you one, or order off Amazon. They're sold in like 2 or 4 packs, and they hold bags so well. I do use them for marinating or freezer prep. There goes my sauce. This smells so good. My legit #1 thing I love about going to IKEA is Swedish meatballs. So if I can make these at home and be delighted, I'll just have to figure out how to make lagan berries. Okay, so just so for awareness, this was a 2-pound bag, so a pound each meal, obviously sufficient for 3 people. And now I'm gonna label this so when I find it, I remember that them meatballs. Just a little reminder for my future self, Swedish. And I'll also put 3.20 on there. Okay, bet them meatballs. I don't think I'll think these are grape jelly barbecue, do you? Okay, so I'm about to stir the meatballs at 3 hours in. The recipe doesn't call for this, but I do what I want. I still have another hour, hour and a half before we're gonna eat these, but I wanted to just give it a good stir in here, nothing sticking to the edges, but I am hoping the sauce will thicken up. Okay, so the crock pot has turned off. The 4 hours on low ended, it's on warm, so I guess not off. And here's what we're left with. Ooh, meaty, meaty goodness. I can tell that the sauce is definitely thickened a little bit at least. I'm serving these with mashed potatoes and those are almost done. My son tried the sauce earlier and he said, it's awesome and salty. So that's our official overview of this meatball. It's awesome and salty. I don't think I'm going to thicken up the sauce. I kind of like it. It'll be a nice thin gravy over our broccoli and mashed potatoes, but super delicious. There you have it, Swedish meatballs and mashed potatoes. So I pulled out these here meatballs. It's 8 in the morning. I'm gonna let them thaw out just a little bit so I can dump it out of the bag and get it in a crock pot for dinner tonight. And we'll see how they are made straight from the freezer. So after about 45 minutes on my counter, it was so easy to pop out of the plastic. The meatballs have been in there about an hour and 15 minutes. It's still a bit on the frozen side, so I'm gonna have this going on low for about 8 hours today. So far, looking good, smelling good. I'm excited for dinner. I decided to open this up and just give the meatballs a quick stir 4 hours into the 8 hours because everything went in as a big clump. I never had a chance to stir it once I put it in here, so I'm just helping the sauce kind of come together a little bit. Okay, so my meatballs have finished the 8 hour mark and they're just on warm now. So I'm gonna open them up and show them to you. Give it a nice stir. I did actually test one earlier and they were really good. I do think the sauce is a little more separated coming from frozen, but it doesn't bother me and it's just as good as the first night. It just looks a little less good, I guess. Highly suggest when you make this recipe to make one the day of and one for the freezer later. I love time-saving hacks like that, and if I'm measuring it, it's just easier to dirty the dishes once and have 2 dinners worth. So here you go. If these meatballs look delicious to you, you should go check out another meatball recipe that I have. It is a little on the wacky side, but anyone that I've ever introduced them to has loved them. So make sure you check that out. I'm gonna link it right next to this video. Thank you so much for watching. A chow down and chow.